Okay. Good morning, viewers. My name is AJ Oba, and this is Clevenard Diaspora TV, online TV. And Clevenard Diaspora Online TV is a platform that brings Africans in diaspora and the Africans at home together to celebrate their achievements and appreciate them. So you're welcome to the program. Today, we're going to have a very important subject which revolves around leadership. And we have an accomplished gentleman in the house. I'm going to be introducing him very shortly. So Impact with AJ is about helping people to discover self and also accomplish their goals and purposes in life. So here you are. Welcome to Cleveland. You can also subscribe to our online TV by going to www.clevelanddiasporatv.com. So welcome, viewers. And here we go. Welcome to Impact. Okay. Here we have a gentleman in the house by name Professor Zwide Mbulawa from Botswana. He's my special guest today on this program. And today we'll be dealing with leadership, issue that revolves around leadership, a very critical issue. But before we delve into the issues that we have today, I would like to do a little introduction of my guest. He's an accomplished academic. Professor Zwide Mbulawa is from Botswana, Gaborone, Botswana, to be precise. I hope I called that right. And he is my guest on the program today. He's the man on the hot seat. And he's an accomplished gentleman, like I said. He's a man in ministry. He has masters in advanced finance management and also financial management. He has a couple of certification on his shoulder, which I'll give him opportunity to really express himself before we kick off. He's a vice chancellor of UCC South Bible University, and he played the following roles: he's a pastor, he's a teacher, he's a mentor, he's a motivator, he's a researcher, he's a scientist, etc., etc. He's a man of many colors. So welcome, Professor Zwide Mbulawa from Botswana. And I want to give you opportunity now to introduce yourself in your own terms. Who is Apostle Zwide Mbulawa? Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Professor Uwe. My name indeed is Professor Zwide Mbulawa, and I'm based in Botswana, Gaborone. And I am a provost and also vice chancellor of an online university called UCSAT that offers both theological and secular courses for development. Well, yes, my basic qualification is a BSc in mathematics and physics, and then I did a master's degree in business leadership. And actually, that is the course that propelled me into the arena of leadership, because it was focusing on leadership and in business and the various types of leadership that is there and which ones are effective and are not effective. And also I've done various other areas of activity in terms of academics, publishing mathematical books and spiritual books and so on.
Okay, so thank you and welcome to the program. You are an accomplished man, and I know that you are a colleague in the system. And no doubt, I just want to make sure that my audience know who we're interacting with. I know who you are, and I'm proud that you are here on the stage today for us to discuss and look at the issues revolving around leadership. Okay, before we go to our first question, I would like to give an overview of why we should actually talk about leadership at this point. Is there really a need to talk about leadership? Yes, I believe there is a need, because leadership being one of the greatest concepts on earth today, there is a real need to talk about leadership. And recently, I was making a research on this subject, and I found out that a search on Google returns 500 million hits under a quarter of a second on the subject of leadership. That's to tell you how massive people are pouring in articles, books, and debates and all of that on this particular subject. And at that level, what comes to mind is that how will people in the position of leadership be able to discern what is right, the right concepts and precepts on leadership? Wouldn't there be a lot of confusion here and there? And no wonder there are some confusions here and there in some quarters when it comes to leadership. And that makes it very important that we have to look into these issues today. So, having said that, in your view, what is your idea on leadership?
Thank you very much for that introduction. Well, basically, I think you mentioned something about confusion on the issue of leadership. Yes, there is a confusion because we tend to be general when we talk about leadership, but we want specific conclusions, but from a general perspective. And that is what is responsible for part of the confusion that is there. Now, what I would like to clarify is that there are different types of leadership. And it is important when you are having a discussion to start of all by clarifying the context of the leadership that you are talking about. There is executive leadership. And from what you are from the way you're talking, I assume that you are really talking about executive leadership. Then there's professional leadership. Professional leadership is where, we're a team of engineers, a team of lawyers, and we can meet, professionally, and the person who leads that would be a leader, but in the context of the profession that they're in. And then the simplest leadership, obviously, is group leadership, where you're a group, and that is mostly related to an assignment. Most of the time, there's an assignment that must be done or fulfilled. And, you choose somebody to be a group to lead in that assignment. And then there is also organizational leadership, within an organization, you've got supervisors, you've got the HR head, and so on. So there's organizational leadership. Then there is personal leadership, how you as an individual, you lead yourself to fulfill your vision and goals. So there are these different categories of leadership. So in the context of what you really mean by the category that we are dealing with.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Professor Mbulawa. I caught you off guard. I intentionally did that because I wanted you to give me a raw answer. Today we're actually going to focus on the motive for leading, the motive for leading and the purpose of leaders. So it will help us to actually narrow our ideas into one box. Okay, having said that, I also find out something. I found out that in Amazon alone, there are nearly 30,000 titles
on leadership.
And almost 100,000 subtitles on the same subject of leadership. But my challenge is this: these titles have only one perspective, and that perspective is on how. There is so much information on how when it comes to how on leadership, but there is not enough on where. There is not enough on where. There is not enough on what and what not. That's the problem. So in that case, it means there is a whole lot of work to be done, because when people take for instance, somebody wants to know more about leadership, and you go on Google downloading books, reading books, and at the end of the day, when you make your research, you find out that these books, these subjects, these concepts are narrowed down to a particular perspective. Don't you think that people will be so confused? Don't you think that people come up with all manner of erroneous conceptions on leadership, which is the reason why we are getting the kind of results we are having today? And we wonder, where did we get it wrong? Now, okay, be it in the corporate arena and political arena or in the community, can you say that leaders are leading with the right reasons? Since we are looking at motive, with what I've just said now, with amount of material out there, looking around in all these corporate bodies, corporate entities, the political arena, the religious arena, and in the community where we live, can you confidently say that the leaders are leading with the right reasons? What's your take?
Well, I think anybody really who assumes a leadership position, there's always the intention to prove himself or herself. In fact, that is one of the basic leadership motives that is there, the ability to prove yourself that, I'm going to deliver in terms of the purpose and the vision that I have in regards to the leadership position that I have. But I think the basic issue is most of the time people are not prepared for the daunting challenges that arise as a result of the position of leadership that they are pursuing. They find that there is a lot of conflict that they cannot understand and that they try to control. And some go to the extent of using domination techniques to try and control, the level of conflict that is there. So I would say basically that I think all leaders really, they have a positive approach when they enter the office of leadership. Their motive is to deliver because they are looking for what is called the legacy. They want to leave behind a legacy. They have a motive of leaving behind a legacy, but they don't have the skills, they don't have the training to understand the type of situation that they are coming in, and they don't probably have a proper training on the dynamics of leadership. Firstly, to understand themselves, because there's what is called, a personalized power motive. And if you're not aware that, you are having a personalized power motive, then you are going to create a lot of errors in the way you respond to the conflict that is there in regard to the practice of the leadership that you are involved in. Now, the personalized motive, really, it involves a person being having a high degree of self-interest. Perhaps there's a tender that is to build an airport, and you feel that perhaps you should, as a leader, you should have a share. You buy some shares in that business. You're looking at your future. You want to retire in a handsome manner. So there's a lot of personal interest that is involved. So there's that personal motive. And then there's what is also called the socialized power motive. That is in contrast to the personalized power motive. The socialized power motive has got the organizational outlook. You want to make sure that the goals of the organization, the vision of the organization, the purpose of the organization is fulfilled. So from the individual perspective, there are those two aspects, and you have to evaluate yourself, evaluate your values, that do my values actually match? And how do they match? Do they match from the personalized power motive, or do they match from the socialized power motive? Now, one has to make a determined decision as a leader that I'm going for a workshop that's going to equip me to discover myself, to discover my skills. Now, what happens sometimes is that when somebody is appointed to a leadership position, they are what are called the orientated person in the new role that he or she has to play. But most of the time, the weakness again there is that the orientation of focus and try to equip him for the ability to handle the conflicts that I was talking about. Because the conflicts are the ones that mess up most of the leaders. You know, a person can start with very good intentions, and then he spends half the energy fighting.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I got your point. You said that in most instances, people who assume the position of leadership have insufficient skill. That's the point you're trying to make. They are not prepared for that position, but they assume the position, which means increasingly more people are assuming positions of leadership with insufficient skills.
True.
And it might shock you, Professor, to know that a recent research shows that over 85% of people who assume positions of leadership lack certification training for the position they occupy. Not to talk about having the wherewithal or have to manage the very circle where they find themselves. And looking at that, let's use Africa as a study case here. Will you say that we have the right people in leadership? Looking at Africa, the way it is, using Africa as a view in respect to this subject today. Do we have the right leaders in place? What's your own view?
Hey, I think, you know, if one has to make a heuristic assumption, heuristic in the true sense of that word, a heuristic assumption, one would conclude that really in Africa, we don't. We don't, because most of the African leaders, they focus on the political agenda. They don't focus mostly on the economic agenda. And really, the political agenda is the, yes, it is the basis, but in reality, deliverable. Political agenda, you know, projects are done for political reasons and political purposes, political pacification, rather than doing projects in terms of the economic aspects and having an agenda that brings in a solid development that is not only current, but is also futuristic, you know. And then I think also the ability to implement most of the plans that we put into our national development plans. Now, political motivations make most of these plans not to really take off the ground. You know, the plans are good, and most of them, they are developed using an economic perspective. But then when the implementation comes, there is the emphasis and focus on the political agenda. And then the political agenda is looking probably at the next election. So you find that most of the time our leaders, they fail because of that aspect of a lack of balance on the economic sphere.
Okay, thank you, Prof. With what you said now, I'm of the opinion that in Africa, the challenge is not the economy. We have the economy, but it is a lack of focus on the purpose of leadership, which is one of the reasons why we're here today. Okay. What that means is that in Africa, there is a wrong philosophy on leadership. It's a philosophy of politics, philosophy of what you can get, which goes down to the fundamentals, two fundamentals, if I may say, of motives for leading, which one of them is reward-centered leadership. I think from what you've said now, I believe that most African leaders are leading for reward.
Yes, yes.
And not for service. Because with what you said, if a political leader is waiting for an opportunity to deliver service in order to gain more votes to remain in power, that makes it political.
That makes it political, yes.
Political. It's no longer a service. Yeah. So, which means he is a reward leader. That's what it is. And from the concept of reward leader, we understood that reward leaders, they shy away from responsibilities. They put their people under pressure, and they leave them insecure and what have you. So I think that's one of the greatest challenge that we have here in Africa when it comes to leadership. People who think that they actually need things to continue to lead. People who think that the more they acquire resources, the more they'll be respected. So the motive of leadership is actually wrong. The perception is wrong because there is a lack of purpose, because it is purpose that determines the motive. Now, when purpose is not in view, the motive is already wrong. So leadership becomes just a reward-centered process, which is very unfortunate. So that is just that. Now,
Can I chip in there and say I agree with you entirely, because if you look at the president of Zambia, they wanted to buy him new cars. So if he was doing what I call personalized power motive, whereby you need new cars for your status, for your profile. But he said, no, are the current cars in good condition? Yes, they are, Mr. President. So then why do I need a new car? Rather let's use those resources of buying a new car to solve some economic problem or some social problem, that is there in the country. So yeah, I agree with you entirely. We need leaders who, when they come into office, they are able to realize that they have got a vision, they have got goals that have to be attended to, and which must be delinked from personal motives.
okay, thank you, Prof.
Now the issue now is there a school that can assist political leaders such that they can be certified that, okay, you can vote for so and so, he's been through our school, just like we do in the normal leadership profiles, that so and so has had this type of training, and we believe that as a national leader, he's going to make it. Probably where this occurs from a grassroots level, because by the time you are the president, you should have gone in that type of training at a basic level. When you become a counselor, or and then you are rising up in the political field, and you are given that type of training, then it will make some sense, and you get more training as you are climbing up the ladder.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Yes, like you said, what you're saying actually it makes sense, because we have leaders here who are voted into power only to go there to amass more power for themselves instead of empowering the people. And we also see situations where some even inherited the throne, and they now became a thorn in the flesh against the people. This is actually what we have seen. And experience can tell us that leadership is not about going to school alone just to go and study leadership. It's something that is progressive. You have to build on it. You have to develop from the inside out. So no one can become a leader overnight. No one can become a leader overnight. Therefore, the issue of Africa when it comes to leadership is not about going to school. They go to school, they go to trainings, leadership trainings, but the training itself is not passing through them, because these trainings are not put into practice. Because if they are put into practice, people will be able to understand that leadership is about responsibility. One must first of all know that, why am I leading? Am I leading to amass wealth for myself? Am I leading for the people? So when leadership becomes about self, it's no longer leadership. The service is no longer there, because service leadership talks about motivation, service for motivation. So when service for motivation is no longer there, then there is no leadership. So it boils down to putting the people under a very strenuous condition in the name of leadership. Okay, let's move on to another question. Now, with your academic background and vast experience in the field, you think that the leaders of 21st century are leading the way? You think they are leading the way?
Well, I think there is a good attempt to try and lead the way, but as we are now coming to the 21st century, what actual steps were done, you know, you can consider the United Nations to the program. I don't, you know, the problem is that there is a basic assumption that when somebody is put into a position of leadership, somehow or the other, he or she will make it because of past experience. But then you'll recognize that, you know, in business, most of the time they require that, you know, you must have some basic training in leadership. I mean, I was in business, and being in business, I did masters in business leadership. I needed to have training to be a leader, and that type of training helped me to understand problems and have the ability to solve them. So most of our leaders currently today don't have any curriculum. Now, I'm not talking as somebody who's involved in the university. There is no curriculum that specifically targets leaders in regard to the current environment. How do we tackle the current challenges that are there in this century? I remember I was talking to one of our lecturers, and I was asking him whether he could design a course as a lawyer that would be used that people who assume a political office, especially parliamentarians, because you've never done anything in regard to the law, how to make law or how to make good laws. So I was saying to him, is it possible for you, you know, for our university to develop such a course, such that, you know, we can offer it to the various regional bodies that are there, to be able to offer a course that can equip people to make appropriate laws, you know. And the same thing applies to leadership. You know, we could probably, talking from a university perspective, you know, offer leadership courses to AU, the African Union, you know, that leaders should be given a course, a refresher course for leaders to take a break and go to AU, not for a conference, but for a leadership, you know, to prepare them for the current challenges that are there. There are too many challenges, you know. I mean, the Ukraine war is showing that, you know, we need leadership that is able to prevent certain calamities happening. I mean, almost we got into a situation of you know, global hunger because Ukraine was attacked. You see, were we prepared for that? I don't think so. Are we prepared, you know, for the rise in the petrol? We're not prepared for that. But, you know, if we have the type of leadership that can actually deal with such issues, then I think we're more prepared. So I think there's awareness about the problems and challenges, but there isn't an equal amount of training and preparedness in terms of. Britain is a case in point. You know, the way leaders keep on resigning in the United Kingdom is a demonstration of the lack of respond appropriately in a proactive manner.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Now, you've given us a view in this regard, which is very, very important. What I also think is that in Africa, they think that political power is the only power there is, which is a misconception. Leadership. You see, people think that when they have political power, they are too powerful,
Yes,
or more powerful than the citizens. But that's not true, because there is political leadership, there is corporate leadership out there, religious leadership also out there. And there you have the community, of which without them you can lead. So I think the notion and misconceptions being pushed by few people from different quarters has actually led to some of these problems that we have today. You see, everybody is fighting to become a political leader or political appointee in our nations without solving any problem, because becoming a political appointee or a politician does not necessarily solve problems. What solves problems is the expertise, the skills that you have acquired beforehand, before you assume that office. You're actually going to tell what you're going to make out of that office. And it's very unfortunate in Africa that you see people who are not even close to, solving issues in offices with so much authority that they can but abuse the office, build the institution, abuse people, build the entire system. So this is what we have. How can someone who doesn't understand leadership be placed in a high position where resources needs to be managed, people need to be managed, and what have you? So this is the problem we've been having in Africa. The political view of leadership that is erroneous is actually costing us so much. It comes with a cost because, like you rightly said, everything is politics. If you have to work here, you must belong to my political party. That's the notion. If I must execute this project, you must somehow be affiliated to my political party. So it's no longer about service delivery. It's no longer about the people. It's about power. You see, it's about amassing more and more power than the people. So when that happens, then leadership is displaced. Okay, so that is that. Okay, moving forward, let's still look at other issues before we go on break, because I know we're going to go on break shortly. But before we do that, I want us to look at one other issue. What is the greatest challenge of leadership in Africa? We have said a lot. Why is it that we have not been able to find our footing when it comes to leadership? The same problem that is happening where you are is happening where I am. In as much as leadership is a global phenomenon, but it seems to me that in Africa, we really have a problem. We have a real problem when it comes to leadership. It seems to me that we cannot manage our leadership. We can't manage our own people. So in your own view, before we go on a break, what do you think is the greatest challenge of leadership in Africa? Why are we not performing? Why are we not using the mineral resources we have in our continent? Why do we have to go to school and come back and depend on the West to survive? Why are we not producing our own cars? Why are we not building our own aeroplanes? Why are we not, inventing and relying on the West, importing all manner of things? And unfortunately, some of the things that are imported into Africa are actually from Africa. They are raw materials from Africa that are sent to Europe and America to be refined and then sold to us at a higher cost. So we paid the bills of what we already have because of irresponsibility of leadership. So we really have a problem. We have a real problem here when it comes to leadership in Africa. What then do you think is the greatest challenge in this regard? With just the view I've just brought up for now. What do you think is the greatest challenge?
Well, I think, the important thing is, firstly, to admit that we have a problem, because you can't solve a problem unless you admit that the problem is there. But we have a tendency of the West. You know, some of the African countries have had their independence more than 50 years now, but they're still blaming the West for their problems as if they had their independence. Acknowledge it, but instead we refer the problem to somebody else. We don't personalize the problem. But I think the biggest problem that we have, since your question was, what really is the fundamental problem that can correct our perspective of leadership? In my view, I think there are two aspects. The first one is accountability. If we that genuine leadership is one that must have accountability. And then we craft everything in regard to our leadership. More than 50 years. We cannot talk about the same problem that we talked before independence, on our first year of independence, on the first 10 years. And lo and behold, even after 50 years, we're still talking about the same problem. The reason really is that is accountability. Once we can be accountable for our actions and are accountable for our equipping and preparation to lead effectively, then we'll go somewhere. The second issue is implementation. And this is related to accountability as well. Because once you are accountable, then it's easy to implement. Now we're not accountable, so it's difficult to implement. We have wonderful plans, you know, really wonderful plans, well crafted by educated Africans. But do we implement those plans? No, we don't. The reason is we're political in the implementation of the plans. We don't really implement them looking at the demands of the purpose, the demands of the vision, and like you have said, the demand that we have to provide a service that is effective. So if we can fundamentally address accountability in leadership and fundamentally address the implementation of what has been agreed upon, not on a political basis, but rather on an economic basis that is driven by purpose and the vision of the nation or the country, then we can get somewhere.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Just before we go on break, like I said, you talk about the issue of accountability. And when you talk about accountability, that would lead us to corruption. Because where there is no accountability, corruption will become the order of the day. Another thing is this, just to add to what you've said, I believe that in Africa, we always want to lag behind. You know, you are in academics. Okay? So now, if you look around, if you conduct a proper research on the institutions in Africa, you find out that many of these institutions has no business operating. There is no sense of purpose why they exist. But yet, these institutions have accreditation. Okay? They are busy dishing out certificates under the guise that they are accredited. Now, the question is, the people who are coming out from these universities, from these institutions of higher learning, cannot produce anything. They can't perform at the workplace. They are not marketable in the market space. Now, is that not a reason to say there is need for a proper change? Because some of the material that are used in these schools are just obsolete. In today's world, they are obsolete. They can't make you compliant. You cannot become competent with what you spend years studying. People go through school 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, and come out. They can't be able to do anything. For example, engineers. Don't we have engineers in Africa? How many of these engineers are actually building bridges? How many of them are building cars? Okay, that tells you that We are not getting it right somewhere. Something is missing. We are not building capacity, because leadership is about facilitating capacity. This is where the government, including the private sectors, come in. But the private sector must be motivated to work in a conducive environment in order to champion that cause. But the government has to play a role, a leading role in this regard. If we have universities that are just running dictionary certification that has no words, okay, and our graduates are not doing anything, they are not competent, then we'll remain where we are. That's one of the major problems that we have. We have a lot of professors in Africa who cannot produce anything, okay? They can't produce anything. So their certification, as I speak now, is obsolete. They need to go back to school. You see, this is why when our children go to Europe and America, they become better. Why? The facility is there for them to perform, to use their mind. Here, you don't have the facility to use your mind. Where there are facilities, there are just few. There are few. There is no equity to use them. So we have continued to work in this kind of condition due to bad governance for such a long time. And this is why we need competent leaders in key positions. We need state managers who know their onion, who know their place in leadership, who are in there for service, not just the lip service people who are there for politics, who are there to mesmerize with people's lives and destiny. No. So there is a real need for change, because here we have people who think they're in leadership to become the boss of others. That's the perception. If I'm a leader, I'm your boss. Okay. So, which is not the case. So we need to change that mindset. Right now, we need to go on break. It's still on Clevenard Diaspora TV. Our goal here is to connect with Africans, both at home and in diaspora, to celebrate their achievements and appreciate them. And today on the host seat, we have a gentleman by name Professor Zwide Mbulawa from Gaborone, Botswana. And our topic remains motive for leading and the purpose for leaders. I remain HJ. Okay, till we come back, we'll see the rest of the stuff.
Clevenard In Diaspora Television is an internet online TV service. What sets us apart is a unique combination of hit African content, first and exclusive international free movies, series, musics, news, events, documentaries, tourism, teleshopping shows, youth TV programs, and live interviews. Clevenard Diaspora Television is available throughout sub-Saharan Africa and to the diaspora markets worldwide. Take your entertainment with you wherever you go. Watch on your smartphone, tablet, laptop, smart TV, depending on your device. Watch free movies with Clevenard Movies Television. Stop searching for free movies websites and watch Clevenard Movies Television. Watch your favorite African shows anywhere at any time. Don't forget to check out our top 5 TV channels created to get you informed. TV 1, Clevenard In Diaspora Television. TV 2, Clevenard Youth Television. TV 3, Clevenard Movies Television. TV 4, Clevenard Teleshopping Television. TV 5, Clevenard Tourism Television. To start watching, sign up at www.clevenard.com and follow the easy steps. Once you're done, log into the Clevenard website or app on your device, click on any one of our 5 TV channels, and hit play. We will be very satisfied and happy to welcome you to our team as one of our new business partners. Contact info@clevenard.com +34 631 279811. Website www.clevenard.com.
Okay, welcome back. It's still Clevenard Diaspora TV, and this is Impact with AJ. You have on the studio with me today a renowned scholar by name Professor Zwide Mbulawa from Gaborone, Botswana. Okay, thank you, viewers. Now, in continuation of this all-important discussion, at this point, I would like us to look at the purpose of leadership. We've been talking the motive for leading and the purpose for leaders. And it is very important for us to understand why people take the lead. Because if we don't get it right on the area of purpose, then the motive also will not be in place. So, Professor, at this stage, if I may ask, what is it that you think is the ultimate purpose for leadership?
Okay, that's an interesting question because, like we have said, really, it is all about purpose. Most of the national development plans and the national visions that are expressed by nations are meant to reflect that type of a framework. That as a nation, we need to have a purpose, we need to have a direction as to where we are going. Now, like I said previously, the real issue is that we have all these wonderful documents that are in our offices, but then the implementation becomes an issue, it becomes a challenge. Now, the implementation that's why those documents are there. They were designed, they were developed precisely because, there's a knowledge. People know that we need to have a purpose, we need to have a direction. So then the problem is to implement. But then the problem of the problem, that means the problem of implementation, is political interference, you see. And then that then becomes worse if there is, as I've said before, there is no accountability. Now, people tend to say that no, in a democratic country, after 5 years, if a government has failed, we'll vote it out of power, so as to force them to be accountable. So our threat is that, guys, you better be accountable, you better deliver. But it doesn't really work because, most of the time, the democratic process, the way people get into power, they use a heavy advertising, and they use some incentives to make people to vote them, so that even if you're not really capable, you are not trained, you're not equipped, you know that there must be purpose. Just as the West has got documentation, on what they are doing and where they are going, the issue is implementation, implementation of that purpose, the discipline, the resolve, and to continue. I mean, if another political party comes into power, it will suspend what the other office was doing, what the other government was doing. Or even if presidents change, the next president may suspend. But if you know that this is the purpose of the country, this is where we're going as a nation, it's not supposed to be personalized. I talk about personalized power motive. It's supposed to be socialized. It must be done in the sense of organization. And the thing that I would like to highlight is that it's not just the purpose alone. Purpose must be connected to vision. That's why we've got national visions in countries. Vision must be connected to destiny. A vision is useless if there is no. We need to be able to build cars by the year 2025. Because we will destiny. So if there is no conscience about that, obviously they were having a serious problem. We're doing, especially in Africa. don't have the context of purpose. They have the context of politics.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. That is it. You've said it masterfully. There is no legacy from what you're saying. I picked up something. We struggle to keep legacy behind for incoming leaders to follow, and which has been a major problem in this part of the world. I believe that there is a loss of sense of purpose in leadership in this part of the world, in Africa entirely. Leadership, though, is a global problem, but in Africa, our case is peculiar. So we know our own issues. We have to deal with them based on what we know. So in Africa, people are not talking about purpose when it comes to leadership. It's about popularity.
Yes.
It's about popularity instead of purpose. So, which is a very wrong perception or concept. See, leadership is not about popularity. It's not a popularity contest. So it's about purpose and the people. So when you talk about purpose, the next thing that should come to mind is people, because leadership is simply service. That's what it is, because you cannot be in leadership without rendering service. But unfortunately, if the people are not aware, if they're not aware, then there will be corruption. Because if I put you in power, you'll be accountable to me. That's what it means. There is a reason why I put you in power, whether you are a political power or not, in political leadership or not. Whether I find yourself in academics, wherever you find yourself, whether it's in corporate leadership, if you are in charge, you are in charge to deliver services. Then if you're not delivering services, then you are not leading. Then something must be done to correct that pattern. Because the problem we have here is that we tend to celebrate people who are not doing what they are supposed to do. We celebrate politicians who are not rendering quality services to the people. We celebrate criminals in power. It's a misnomer. It's uncalled for. How can you celebrate people who are not delivering services to you? Okay, so by the time we have a sense of responsibility, it's not just about the people who are in political positions or other leadership positions. It's also about the people. The more the people become aware of what leadership is about, the better for the people. Because it is at that level that they will now place a demand on whoever that is in charge to say, look here, this is your responsibility. We've not seen any. You are supposed to deliver so and so services. We've not seen any. Your responsibility is to do 1, 2, 3. You've not done it. So is either you do 1, 2, 3, or you leave the space for people who are willing to deliver services. This is what it is. So oftentimes we find ourselves in a place where we are playing local politics, where it's about who is more popular, who has more money, or who has actually stolen more money. Okay? So, and that is a major problem. That's what we have. If Africans will start exercising their willpower on their leaders, I believe we're going to have a more conducive environment for everyone. There won't be no reason, there won't be any reason to start traveling to Europe or America in order to study. How long shall we continue to travel to America to study when we can build universities and facilitate them to deliver quality education to our children and to Africans? Why would we live here and travel to Europe or America to receive Medicare when we can build hospitals in our place? You see, there is no sense of purpose. There is no sense of belonging. That's the problem we have. So until we change this mindset, leadership here will remain a shambles. That's what it is. So the purpose of leadership is to render service. And with that service, there is no motivation for leadership. So we should serve intentionally, committedly, and sacrificially. And that is what is lacking in the African context of leadership. So at this point, I want to ask you, Professor, you are a provost and a vice chancellor in an academic setting. Now, the question is, how do you solve challenges? Because leadership is about solving problems. How do you deal with challenges in that setting?
The best way to solve challenges and to deal with them is to research, to locate the problem or locate the challenge, and then understand the problem or understand the challenge, and then to look at the basic assumptions that surround the challenge and the problem. And then once you understand the basic assumptions, then you develop the research framework that has to deal with those problems or challenges that are there. And then when you've now done the research, because the research will now show you where the emphasis of the problem is, it will then give you insights as to exactly how to deal with the problem or the challenge from a scientific perspective, rather than knowing a problem and then just thinking offhand that this is what I have to do. So that is one of the big advantages that the West has over most of us here in Africa, is that, you know, I remember when I was a kid, people would say, you know, the Europeans will spend a lot of energy learning about an anthill, and they get a PhD about an anthill, you know. So we would despise that, and we think it's not worth, you know, getting a PhD on that. But that is the philosophy, really. The philosophy is that anything, even a purpose and a vision, it has to be researched. The assumptions of the vision, the assumptions of the purpose must be substantiated. How do you do that? You must do some research. And there are various ways of doing research. It can be qualitative, it can be quantitative, it can be a combination, but research is key. You see, research.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
Yeah.
I'm taking home with the word research in order to solve problems. I also concur with you, because you can't solve problems if you don't know the cause of the problem. I'm also aware that in schools, in universities, because I learned that UCC University is not just a theological university, it's also a secular setting. Now, in some instances, we find ourselves in a position where some members of the staff are problematic. Okay, they are problematic within the system. Now, aside from solving problems generally, how do you deal as a leader with people in that space who are serving under you? Because you are the provost, you are the gateway to that university. Now, when you find members of the staff who are unruly, who are not following the policies of the school, who are doing things their own way, how do you handle with the school team or the school leadership? How do you handle such issues? Do you expel them? Do you punish them in other ways? And how do you approach those kind of issues? Because these things always happen in school settings all over the world.
Yeah. There, I think the basic aspect there is, first of all, when you hire somebody into an organization, you must hire somebody who fits the model of the institution. Once you hire somebody who doesn't fit, you're going to be solving problems of organizational fit, and those ones are extremely difficult to solve, you know. So at the end of the day, you'll have to expel that person because the person doesn't fit into an organization. It is not the skill of the person that counts. Sometimes, you know, we take somebody in because we need a certain type of skill, but then it is not the skill that really, the skill is important, you know, it's going to affect the delivery aspect, but the relationships in the delivery is also extremely important. So you have to make sure that you have a structured interview process where a person must be able to substantiate himself or explain himself, and the person is assessed according to a certain formula that, you know, your organization, So you construct a type of interview technique that will assist to reveal whether the individual will actually perform well in your organization. But you see, sometimes we ignore the organizational fit aspect, and we only focus on the gifting that, and probably the educational, progress of the person is done, has got about 5 degrees, has got experience, but then the person doesn't really fit, and sometimes the person may not fit exactly. So what happens is we can take a person in, and then we have what is called orientation. The orientation that takes place in organization is meant actually to facilitate a person to fit into the purpose, to fit into the vision, to fit into the model of what is being done.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Our time is running out now. We are going to conclude this segment of the program and prepare for another section next week. At this point, I know we've been able to touch some few things on motives for leading and also on the purpose of leaders. And we've actually hit the nail at the head. Looking at motive for leading, we look at the reward-centered leadership and that of the service-centered leadership. And we believe that these two fundamental motives actually drive leadership. But the reality is that the reward-centered leadership will actually lead people to a point where they become so insecure because reward-centered leaders are not willing to take responsibility of their task. And also, are not willing to develop managers, people who will be able to manage other leaders under them. And this is one of the challenges in that respect. They are also not willing to confront issues. They would like to dodge them, considering the economic impact that will take them. So in that respect, they leave their people vulnerable and the organization also without direction. Meanwhile, the service-centered will actually give direction, and which is the motivation for leadership, by the way. So this is some of the things we've looked at today. And also the point that our leaders should be accountable, and also the fact that leadership is not just about political power. It's more than that. So we also looked about training and skill, being competent to actually assume leadership. So at this point, on a final note, what is your word for our viewers out there? What are you going to leave us with as we're about to leave the stage now?
The most important thing is to believe that we can equal the West, but we have to be prepared to do what is right. And I think that the best thing is that let's stop blaming the West. We are now mature, we are grown up. Let's start delivering.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, you've heard it. This is Professor Zwide Mbulawa from Botswana. He's the one that has been giving us emphasis on motive for leading and the purpose of leaders. It's been an interesting moment having you in the studio. It's still Clevenard Diaspora TV. We are here to connect with Africans back home and in diaspora, and also to celebrate their achievement and appreciate them. So you are watching here Impact with HJ. By the grace of God, we'll be coming back next week, Monday, to take it further on this subject. From now, I would like to say bye and thank you for watching.